The villagers all say that Tong Siya is as beautiful as a fox spirit, but her waist is still soft and thin, and she can pinch it with one hand. She can't carry a hoe or a brick, she can't bear the hardships, and there's still a lot of trouble. Maybe even after getting married, she will make her husband wear a green hat. Jin Ye, the roughest and wildest man in the village. I'll come. I'm not afraid of wearing a green hat, I just want to try what it feels like to be a fox spirit. Later on, Jin Ye, who knew how to eat the essence and taste, would dote on Tong Siya every day, doting on her and accidentally making her the richest person in the country. Chapter 1. Rebirth. Back to 1972. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. In April 1972, on the back mountain of Fangling village, a group of women were squatting in groups of 3 or 5, holding small branches and struggling to dig wild vegetables. They looked at the young girl sitting under the shade of a nearby tree with their eyes tightly closed while digging wild vegetables. The young girl was wearing loose green military pants, with a cool white background and a small green flower shirt on her upper body. She also had a bamboo basket beside her. In the basket, there were several neatly tied and watery wild vegetables tied with fine grass ropes, and a few freshly picked yellow wild flowers were inserted into the knots, making them even more tender and tender. The women looked at the young girl sitting on the ground leaning against the tree trunk, then at the wild vegetables in her basket, and murmured softly, "I really don't understand how these educated youth dress up so beautifully to dig wild vegetables. Look, they're still wearing cool shirts. That's it. Follow us to dig wild vegetables, she's still wearing leather shoes. The people in the city are different from us rural people. Look, even when Miss dug a wild vegetable, she had to use wild grass to twist a rope and tie it neatly, and then insert a few wild flowers. So what? You're not just a waste. How long have you been doing this job? Just say you're dizzy. Humph. You've been a wealthy lady in the city before. She's the only one who came to the countryside to cut in line. Why don't you bring a maid to serve her? Humph, only this kind of capitalist lady has this kind of leisure. Not to mention anything else, just her ability to twist a rope and pick a few wild flowers, I can dig another wild vegetable. Hey, I don't understand. Why did the capitalist's daughter come to our village? Isn't it because she's a fake daughter? Fake. Pooh. The women became more and more excited as they spoke, and their voices grew louder. They didn't notice at all that Tong Siya, a young girl sitting under the shade of a tree with her back against the trunk, had already frowned and opened her eyes. She looked at everything in front of her in a daze, feeling a splitting headache, accompanied by symptoms such as difficulty breathing and blurred vision. She is actually very healthy, and all her current discomforts should be referred to as a continuation of past life illness and delusions. This is because she has already experienced her past life. Yes, she is a reborn person. Tong Siya and Tong Siya in their past lives were the wrong children to be held. They exchanged lives and then returned to each other. Tong Siya left the village and went to the city, and Tong Siya came to the village as an educated youth. From then on, their destinies have been entangled endlessly. To sum up, Tong Siya will encounter an accident in a month and be forced to marry the head of the educated youth team, Jing Xiangdong, and have given birth to his child. After Jing Xiangdong was admitted to university in 1977, he had Tong Siya take his child to a rural area near his hometown, taking care of the child while serving the Jing family's parents. Since then, the couple has been living apart from each other. However, Jing Xiangdong comes back every 2 years and always makes Tong Siya conceive another child. So, Tong Siya gave birth to a total of 5 children for him. Jing Xiangdong went to university in the city and opened a company in the city after graduating from university. During this process, Jing Xiangdong also brought back 3 children, saying that they had poor backgrounds and no parents, and asked Tong Siya to help take care of them. Because Jing Xiangdong said he wants to start a business and doesn't have money. So Tong Siya didn't ask him for a penny and relied solely on farming on her own, raising chickens, ducks, geese, and pigs. She suffered from illnesses and only managed to support 8 children and her in-laws. During the Spring Festival in 1999, Tong Siya wanted to surprise Jing Xiangdong by bringing 8 children and an elderly couple to the city without informing him in advance. Unexpectedly, the whole family saw Jing Xiangdong and Tong Siya lying comfortably on a double bed in a luxurious villa, known as a loving couple. Tong Siya was stunned. What surprised her even more was that the 3 children that Jing Xiangdong had brought back before were actually the children of Tong Siya. And also, the parents of the Jing family are aware of it. Tong Siya collapsed. But Jing Xiangdong said to Tong Siya, "Siya, you can't blame us, because you owe her 4 springs. You replaced her for 18 years of wealthy childhood, where clothes were stretched out and food was eaten. Now it's time to repay." The parents of the Jing family also told Tong Siya, "Si Chun is the daughter.in.law recognized by our Jing family. After all, she married Xiang Dong with a marriage certificate and is a fair and upright couple. Besides having 8 children, what else do you have? However, we will not despise you. In the future, you will follow us. As long as you take good care of us, Xiang Dong will not miss you a bite." Tong Siya is extremely angry. She wants to take her 5 children and sue Jing Xiangdong for bigamy in court. And those 5 children were unwilling to go with her. A dignified, wealthy and handsome father, an elderly and poor rural mother, they all chose Jing Xiangdong. Of course, it also includes Tong Sichuan's 3 children. From then on, Tong Siya embarked on a difficult and long road of filing a complaint. Jing Xiangdong was too wealthy. At that time, Tong Siya had already suffered from a terminal illness due to long-term physical exhaustion and overwork, and could not compete with him. And he is so wealthy that he is unwilling to give a penny to treat Tong Siya's illness. In the end, Tong Siya, who was suffering from poverty and illness, huddled in a dilapidated house and swallowed her last breath in anger and despair. After Tong Siya's death, for some reason, her soul was imprisoned by Jing Xiangdong's side, unable to leave. Jing Xiangdong seems to regret it. He cried bitterly every day holding her photo, saying that Tong Siya was his only lover. His only motivation for working so hard to earn money is to enable Tong Siya and her children to live a prosperous life. He said he never allowed Tong Siya to be with him because Jin Ye had been coveting her for so many years and even inquiring about her whereabouts. It was because Jing Xiangdong had no choice but to hide Tong Siya in the countryside. He said he had no feelings for Tong Siya at all. He and Tong Siya obtained their marriage certificate because Tong Sichuan's ex-husband always came to cause trouble. Tong Siya couldn't bear the trouble and begged Jing Xiangdong to help her obtain the certificate. Jing Xiangdong felt that Tong Siya was Tong Siya's sister, so he helped her. He said he and Tong Siya were innocent and just partners. That day, when Tong Siya took the elderly and children to find them, he and Tong Siya happened to win a big order because they were so happy that they both drank some alcohol. It was true that both of them were drunk that day. He said that on the day Tong Siya came with the elderly and children, it happened that Tong Sichuan's ex-husband also came to pester him. He had no choice but to treat Tong Siya so badly in order to protect her safety. In fact, he also regretted it afterwards. But when he went back to find Tong Siya, she insisted on divorcing him. He didn't want to leave her, so he deliberately kept dragging on. He really didn't know that she was already so seriously ill. He also said that he is not the father of those 3 children, they belong to Tong Siya and her ex-husband. He just pitied Tong Siya for getting divorced and having to take care of 3 children and work to support his family. He felt that Tong Siya was working too hard. I also think that raising 5 children is raising Tong Siya, and raising 8 is also raising her. It's better to let Tong Siya raise them all. Anyway, it's Tong Siya who owes Tong Siya. He did this to bring Tong Siya and Tong Siya closer together. Tong Siya sneered. Later on, it was probably because Jing Xiangdong was so sad and upset about Tong Siya's passing that 2 elderly people and 8 children came to persuade him, my daughter.in.law, mother, is kind and virtuous. She loves you so much and has given everything for you. She definitely hopes that you will be okay. The dead have passed away, but the living still have a future. You need to cheer up for us. In this way, under the urging and blessings of his family, Jing Xiangdong and Tong Siya became a true couple. When Tong Siya became pregnant again at an advanced age, Jing Xiangdong happily held a grand wedding for her. In the beautiful melody of the wedding march, Tong Siya coldly watched Tong Siya, dressed in a luxurious and expensive wedding dress, with a happy smile, walking step by step towards Jing Xiangdong. Suddenly, a handsome man with white temples rushed into the wedding venue, grabbing Jing Xiangdong's collar and sternly asking, "How could you marry Tong Siya? Where is Siya? Where is she?" Tong Siya, who was floating in mid-air, was very surprised. Who is this man? Faced with the man's questioning, Jing Xiangdong also went crazy. He laughed wildly and said, "Tong Siya. Ha ha ha, Tong Siya is dead. She is already dead. Jin Ye, even if you crush me in the business world, what's wrong? Do you think you can make decisions for her? Ha ha ha, the goddess you've been longing for has given birth to 5 children for me. You consider her a treasure, but in fact, she's just a watch that I've fucked." Tong Siya was so hateful that she rushed towards Jing and wanted to strangle him alive. But she is a soul that can only cross the body of Jing Xiangdong time and time again, unable to do anything at all. Jin Ye, on the other hand, reached out his hand with anger and tears in his eyes, and grabbed Jing Xiangdong's neck. The screams of surprise echoed from everyone, and Tong Siya wanted to see if Jing Xiangdong had died. Unexpectedly, she opened her eyes wide and looked back to April 1972. Up to now, Tong Siya has been reborn for 2 days, still feeling a bit dazed and with confused memories. At this moment, the women began to discuss again. I pity Siya so much. The good factory director's biological daughter is really precious, but she was picked up by the wrong person and came to our village to suffer for so many years. Fortunately, the factory director Tong was able to pick up Sichuan's biological daughter and immediately took her back, kicking Tong Siya's fake daughter to the countryside. Hey, you guys, Tong Siya has been in our village for over a month now. Why hasn't the Tong family brought Tong Siya back? Why are they still letting her stay at the educated youth station? Are you foolish as the couple of the Tong family? What kind of world do you not know now? After walking for 4 spring, you will lose 1 mouth to eat. Take Tong Siya back. Humph, what kind of farm work can a young lady who grew up in the city do? After all, Tong Siya is their biological child. Come on, just based on the character of the Tong family, they can't usually pay attention to Tong Siya. During holidays, they may worry about Tong Siya's small rations. Also, when they reach the age of marriage, they may plan some dowry or something. Tong Siya is also quite pitiful. Poor fart. Why didn't you feel sorry for her when she was eating and drinking spicy food in the city? The women's vague discussions alerted Tong Siya. Ah yes, it's April 1972 now. In another month, she was framed by someone and drank the potion, then rolled eastward with Jing on the same bed. At this point, she had a bad reputation and had to marry Jing Xiangdong, and even become pregnant with his child soon after. Now, she has not been forced to marry Jing Xiangdong. Everything is still in time. Suddenly, someone shouted Tong Siya's name at the foot of the mountain. Tong Siya, someone from Ningcheng is here. Your adoptive father entrusted someone to come and find you. Ningcheng. Foster father. Tong Siya squinted her eyes. Tong Siya and Tong Sichuan's mother were held incorrectly due to a medical accident that occurred while giving birth at the same hospital. In March 1972, after the Public Security Bureau contacted 2 people to explain the situation, the Tong and Tong families agreed to let their two daughters return to their respective homes. Tong Qianjin, the adoptive father who raised Tong Siya for 18 years, is the factory director of Ningqing state-owned subsidiary food factory. Now, is someone from Ningqing here? Tong Siya stood up and then bent down to pick up the bamboo basket. The long-tongued women behind started discussing again. TSK 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 TSK, look at Tong Siya's waist. She's not only good-looking, but also has a slender waist. She can pinch it with just one palm. Her waist is so soft. No wonder all the old and young men in our village love to look at her. Pooh, a fox spirit. Don't say that. They are good-looking and have a thin waist, but they are very hard-working and love to work, which is also true. That's right. She's good-looking and hard-working. What do you think? Not to mention that the old and young men in the village like her, everyone wants to marry her. I like her too, okay. Who dares to marry her? Be careful not to be cuckolded. Tong Siya ignored these people and hurriedly descended the mountain with a basket on her shoulder. Chapter 2. Rough Han Jin Ye. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The person who came to find Tong Siya is Driver Zhang from Ningqing state-owned subsidiary food factory. Driver Zhang is a subordinate of Tong Siya's adoptive father Tong Congee. Fangling village is about 100 kilometers away from Ningqing, where the Tong family is located. This time, he brought a message from the Tong family in the city to Tong Siya. The letter was written by Su Lanjiao, the foster mother of Tong Siya, with only a few numbers and very concise content. Find a way to get some high-quality mountain goods to be brought back by Driver Zhang. Your third brother needs to give gifts to help him find a job. Tong Siya stared at the note, lost in thought. How did she do it in her past life? She immediately took out all the cool shirts, soap, snow cream, toothpaste, and other items she had brought with her, and exchanged them with the villagers for high-quality sesame oil, cured meat, old hens, eggs, duck eggs, dried mushrooms, and bamboo shoots. She packed 2 large bags and asked the driver to bring them back. The reason why Tong Siya is so devoted is because she has just been in the queue here for over a month and is not adapted to everything in the countryside. She hopes that her adoptive parents will take her back to the city based on their past relationship, which is why she is so proactive. In fact, what? The adoptive parents not only never mentioned asking her to return to the city, but also because this time she always responded to her requests. Later on, the adoptive parents became even stronger and demanded things from her without restraint, regardless of how difficult her situation was. Why is she still putting in so much effort? The driver Zhang, who was delivering letters for the Tong family, was still eagerly watching her. After considering for a moment, Tong Siya picked up a few wild vegetables from the basket and handed them to driver Zhang. Uncle, you've worked hard this time. These are specialties of Fangling village, take them. This one is lychee grass, this one is wild amaranth, and this one is fresh mugwort. Driver Zhang looked in shock at the several wild vegetables handed over by Tong Siya. Mainly, when he arrived, Su Lanjiao greeted him and said, "You need to reserve some space in the big truck. In case there is no place to put the mountain goods brought back by Siya, it will be bad." Tong Siya waited for a while, but when she saw that driver Zhang had not reached out to pick up the wild vegetables for a long time, she put those few handfuls of wild vegetables in his hand and said sincerely, "Uncle, you must hand over these few handfuls of wild vegetables to Director Tong. Everything in the mountains is really good." Driver Zhang looked at those wild vegetables and then at Tong Siya. In the end, he didn't say anything and left with the wild vegetables. Driver Zhang had just left when Tong Hun hurriedly arrived and said, "Hey, where's the person from the city who brought the message?" Tong Hun is Tong Siya's second sister. The situation is as follows. After Tong Qingji and his wife took back their biological daughter Tong Sikhun from Fangling village, they changed her surname and officially changed her name to Tong Sikhun, then he asked Tong Siya to change her surname to Tong and sent her to the countryside as an educated youth, arriving at Fangling village where the Tong family is located. Compared to the kindness released by the Tong family towards Tong Siya, the Tong family is less concerned about Tong Siya. Tong Siya has been in Fangling village for over a month and has been staying and eating at the Jiqing station. She has never seen Tong's family before. It's not that Tong Siya doesn't want to recognize her relatives, but every time she goes, the Tong family makes various sarcastic remarks, thinking that Tong Siya is delicate, and even more afraid that Tong Siya wants to reach out to them for something. Tong Siya is not very willing to go. Now Tong Siya ignored Tong Ek-hun and turned around with the basket, leaving. Tong Ek-hun looked at Tong Siya's slender and graceful figure, both anxious and jealous, and shouted, "Debt collector. Stop me. Tong Siya has already gone far." Tong Ek-hun was furious and chased after him, saying urgently, "The debt collector, didn't they say that the Tong family in the city sent someone to bring some mountain goods back?" Tong Siya replied slowly, "I've already given it." She has a lazy tone, a sharp ending, and an indescribable charm. Tong Ek-hun was stunned for a moment, feeling flushed and thirsty, his heart pounding wildly. However, Tong Ek-hun didn't forget the main matter and quickly asked, "What did you give?" She was extremely anxious, mainly wanting to know how much wealth Tong Siya had. Tong Siya replied, "Wild vegetables." Tong Ek-hun was stunned and said, "What? You gave someone wild vegetables," with a shocked expression on his face. Tong Siya gave Tong Ek-hun a white glance and said, "What's wrong? You still don't like those wild vegetables? Wild vegetables also have medicinal value, can they save lives in critical times?" Tong Ek-hun said angrily, "No, it's rare for people in the city to speak up and appreciate things from our countryside. Why don't you prepare more? Preserved meat, arranged by the old hen. The bamboo shoots and wild mushrooms in the back mountain of our village are also quite delicious." Tong Siya stood still, extended her delicate and fair fingers, pointed in the direction and told Tong Ek-hun, "If you're willing to give it." "Oh, the person just left. If you can still stop him by taking a small path now, go." After speaking, Tong Siya continued walking towards the educated youth station with her basket in hand. Tong Ek-hun was stunned for a moment before finally realizing, "No, what I mean is. What's this about me? The Ren Tong family isn't here to find me. I'm talking about you." Suddenly someone sneered, "You would also say it's none of your business, why are you still talking so much nonsense?" Tong Urchin's speech was interrupted, and his face instantly turned red. Tong Siya turned her head and saw the person who was helping her speak. That is a rough man with a height of 1.8 meters and a tall and sturdy physique. He is about 23 or 4 years old, with long hair covering his ears, a high nose bridge and a wide jaw exposed. His upper body is bare, revealing a muscular wheat-colored tendinous flesh. He is wearing tattered pants and a pair of big feet covered in mud spots. He is Jin Ye. Tong Siya has never had such a complex mood before. In her previous life, she came to Fangling village in 72 AD and left in 77 AD. She stayed here for a total of 5 years and had never had any contact with Jin Ye. But after her death in a previous life, when Jing Xiangdong repented while holding her portrait, he said that Jin Ye had been looking for her for a lifetime, and in her past life, at the wedding of Jing Xiangdong in Tong Siya, she watched helplessly as Jin Ye ruined the wedding. When she chased after Jing Xiangdong about her whereabouts, she even became furious and strangled him alive. Tong Siya had to think about this question. Can it be said that Jin Ye has always had a crush on her? However, after returning, she had not yet met Jin Ye. Now I see it, Tong Siya bit her lower lip and looked at him in confusion. Tong Ek-hun originally wanted to give Tong Siya a good lesson, but who made her not understand what's good or bad. But Jin Ye appeared from somewhere and even helped Tong Siya speak, which really scared her. Tong Ek-hun was very afraid of Jin Ye. She wanted to put on the airs of a sister and scold Tong Siya, but then remembered Jin Ye's harsh tongue and ruthlessness. In the end, Tong Hun glared at Tong Siya with hatred and ran away. Jin Ye's gaze finally settled on Tong Siya. The girl's figure was graceful and delicate, standing under the tall and oily camphor tree. The golden sunlight scattered from the tree crown seemed to have cast a faint halo on her, so bright and dazzling that he dared not look much, but couldn't help but not look. After reading it, I realized that the girl was so beautiful, with a pair of apricot eyes that were watery, and lips that were round and delicate like petals. She has particularly good skin, which is hydrated and white with a hint of redness, like a sweet and juicy peach. Jin Ye's face suddenly turned red. This is his first time sneaking a peek at a girl from the front. Unexpectedly, the girl boldly looked at him directly. He was startled. Fortunately, the broken hair in front of his forehead covered his eyes. The girl probably wouldn't know how passionate his eyes were when he looked at her, and she definitely wouldn't know that he was already blushing, right? The rough man carefully concealed his thoughts and secretly glanced at Tong Siya before turning around and leaving without hesitation. Tong Siya shouted at his back, "Hey, do you want to change things?" Jin Ye immediately stopped his steps. He looked at her vegetable basket. Tong Siya still had 3 or 4 wild vegetables left in her basket. She carefully trimmed them to the same height and tied them neatly with a thin grass rope. There was also a beautiful wild flower inserted on the rope, exquisite and beautiful like a bouquet. Jin Ye stared at the few wild vegetables for a while, didn't say anything, and continued to carry the newly hunted wild rabbit, stroking towards his home. He is an ominous person. When he was young, he suffered a family breakdown and was called a disaster by the village. Some even said that anyone who approached him would be unlucky. So, although I really want to look back at her again, but let's stay away from her. Unexpectedly, after only a few steps, Jin Ye heard the sweet and pleasant voice of the female educated youth again. "Jin Ye, I can mend your clothes, and I also have shampoo. I can help you wash your hair and give you another haircut as a gift." Jin's ambition is like beating a drum. He stood still and turned his head to ask her, "What do you want?" Even his voice was mixed with an imperceptible excitement, wishing the whole world would know. She finally took the initiative to talk to me. Tong Siya stared at the plump and round wild rabbit in his hand, licked his lips, and said, 5 bowls of meat soup." Jin Ye remained silent for a long time, nodded slightly, and turned to leave quickly. He lowered his head, raised the corners of his lips, and his heart was so happy that it was about to explode. Chapter 3. Bean congee and cold mixed wild vegetables, first. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Tong Siya returned to the educated youth station. There are 20 educated youth, 15 men and 5 women, living in the educated youth station in Fangling village. Considering that the female educated youth are not very physically strong, the production team leader did not let them work on the ground, but instead asked them to pick up firewood or cut grass to feed pigs with the women in the village. In addition, educated youth eat big pot rice, so female educated youth also have to take turns cooking. Tong Siya's task today is to partner with another female educated youth, Hu Xiaolin, to go up the mountain to dig wild vegetables and collect firewood, and to cook at the educated youth station alone. Early this morning, Hu Xiaolin rushed to say that she was cooking, and Tong Siya chose to go to the back mountain to dig wild vegetables and pick firewood. Not long after Tong Siya returned, the other educated youth also came back carrying hoes and agricultural tools. "Come on, everyone. Hurry up and take a good rest, have lunch." Hu Xiaolin warmly greeted the male educated youth who had just returned from work. The educated youth put down their agricultural tools, lined up to wash their hands, and then went to the kitchen stove with their lunch boxes to fetch food. Tong Siya also followed everyone into the kitchen with a lunch box. The light in the kitchen was poor and dark, making it difficult to see anything clearly. I could only hear Hu Xiaolin's enthusiastic cheers. It is said that today's lunch is bean congee and cold mixed wild vegetables. Led by Hu Xiaolin, we will share the food with everyone. Each person gets 2 spoons of bean congee and 1 spoonful of cold mixed wild vegetables. Tong Siya didn't see the food in his lunch box until he got out of the kitchen. Bean congee with more water than beans and almost transparent soup, plus a pinch of cold mixed wild vegetables. She was lost in thought. Did you boil this clear bean soup for 10 minutes? Are the beans ripe yet? And the small handful of raw wild vegetables in the lunch box is even more ridiculous. No one really eats wild vegetables raw. Even if it's called cold mixed wild vegetables, you still need to wash them first. Blanch the wild vegetables with boiling water, rinse them with clean water several times to remove bitterness, and then add ginger, garlic, salt, soy sauce, vinegar and mix well. But the small handful of cold mixed wild vegetables lying quietly in her lunchbox, even the fuzz on the leaves is still there. This wild vegetable is clearly raw. So she dug up wild vegetables and picked up firewood all morning without stopping for a minute. And Hu Xiaolin, who was her partner, probably made a fire, washed the beans, put them in a pot and boiled them with water for 10 minutes. That's it. Someone has already taken a bite of cold mixed wild vegetables and then vomited profusely. This thing can't be eaten, the male educated youth frowned and said, cold mixed wild vegetables are raw and bitter. They're also fishy. Another male educated youth also spat out the wild vegetables he had eaten and started arguing, isn't this wild vegetable unwashed? A mouthful of sand. Everyone got into a fight. Who made this meal on earth? Can it be eaten? Yes. The bean congee is as thin as water. The beans can't be bitten. We've been tired all morning, why don't you give us this to eat? This is my first time eating raw wild vegetables. Are you sure this thing won't kill anyone? I won't eat any more. I won't work in the afternoon either. At this moment, the leader of the educated youth team, Jing, stood up to the east and said, comrades, please be quiet. Please be quiet. There must be some misunderstanding here. By the way, which 2 comrades are responsible for cooking today? Tong Siya looked towards Jing Xiangdong. It has been 2 days since she returned from her previous life, and Tong Siya has been very restrained. She keeps telling herself not to look at Jing Xiangdong or pay attention to him, otherwise, she may not be able to resist and want to strangle him alive. It has to be said that Jing Xiangdong is indeed quite handsome. He is tall, elegant and handsome in appearance, and pays more attention to clothing. His hairstyle always maintains a 30-70 cut, fits snugly without covering his ears, and his shirt is always a light-colored shirt, making him look more energetic and capable than other male educated youth. Tong Siya quickly withdrew her gaze. She was afraid that her hateful gaze would turn into a sharp sword, stabbing Jing Xiangdong to death. On the contrary, Jing Xiangdong stared at Tong Siya for a while. Tong Siya sat quietly on the short stool, calm and composed, wearing a well-fitting white shirt on her upper body, showing her slender waist and well-developed figure. Her long legs were slanted down, and her wide green military pants looked like a skirt. The legs were rolled up by her, revealing a pair of slender ankles. Jing Xiangdong only feels dry mouth and tongue. The word beautiful can no longer be used to describe Tong Siya alone. The beauty of the world may be more accurate. Just like now, even if Tong Siya didn't do anything or say anything, she firmly held on to everyone's gaze. Upon hearing Jing Xiangdong's inquiry and everyone's discussion, Hu Xiaolin immediately rushed out of the kitchen and pointed at Tong Siya, shouting loudly, "Today is Tong Siya in charge of cooking." Everyone's gaze is once again focused on Tong Siya. Tong Siya held the lunchbox and looked quietly at Hu Xiaolin. Her past life was too long ago, and she had experienced too much suffering and torment, to the extent that she could no longer recall whether she had also been falsely accused by Hu Xiaolin in her past life. A faint smile on Tong Siya's face disappeared in an instant. Soon, Tong Siya began her performance. She first looked at Hu Xiaolin with surprised and incredulous eyes, then lowered her head and looked at her hands, which had been cut with shallow blood marks by wild grass. She also looked at the shoes that had been muddy from going up and down the mountain. Finally, with tears in her eyes, she slowly looked around at the educated youth and bit her lower lip. So, Tong Siya didn't say a word, but her body language and subtle facial expressions made everyone instantly understand. Female educated youth have always cooperated with each other. One person went up the mountain to dig wild vegetables and collect firewood, while the other stayed at the educated youth station to cook. Now Hu Xiaolin said, was it the rice cooked by Tong Siya? Although Tong Siya's hands were wide open and her shoes were covered in mud, only those who worked up the mountain could do this. Looking at Hu Xiaolin, full of vitality and rosy complexion, and Tong Siya, silently shedding tears. Everyone has a scale in their hearts. When looking at Tong Siya, everyone showed a look of heartache. When looking at Hu Xiaolin again, everyone became somewhat indignant. Hu Xiaolin was stunned. She never expected that Tong Siya would affect everyone's judgment with just a few actions and expressions without saying a word. At this moment, Tong Siya opened her mouth in a muffled voice, "I'm sorry." Her voice was filled with a strong choking, and her attitude was resentful and humble. Tong Siya was already beautiful, but now she frowned and her voice also had a crying tone, becoming increasingly weak and helpless, making people feel heartbroken when they look at her. The eyes of the educated youth towards Hu Xiaolin all changed. Hu Xiaolin also froze. She woke up early in the morning, picked a lot of soybeans, and then fried them in oil and sprinkled salt on them, enjoying a delicious meal. Then I steamed another basket of beans, which were crispy and delicious. I mixed them with lard and salt, and had a stuffed bun because she had already eaten enough in advance. Everyone's rations were not enough. Because she spent too much time cooking food for herself, she didn't have time to cook bean congee, and even cold mixed wild vegetables didn't have time to wash and blanch. However, Hu Xiaolin had already figured out a solution. The other educated youth in the village have been living together peacefully for almost 2 years, but Tong Siya has only been here for over a month and is not very familiar with everyone. This pot, of course, will be carried by Tong Siya. Hu Xiaolin has even figured out that as long as Tong Siya dares to deny that she didn't cook at noon, she will definitely make a few strange remarks. But Tong Siya surprisingly said the 3 words, "I'm sorry," with grievances. Hu Xiaolin was clearly preparing a belly full of draft, but at this moment she couldn't say a word. Just, very frustrated. Chapter 4. Bean Congee and Cold Mixed Wild Vegetables, Part 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Hu Xiaolin has already sensed something is amiss. Tong Siya has been in Fangling village for over a month now, and she has been bullying her for over a month. In the past, Tong Siya has always let her bully her. Maybe it's also because she wants to integrate into this environment as soon as possible. But Hu Xiaolin never expected that Tong Siya, the usually quiet and reserved beauty of Mu, would appear to have changed her personality. On the surface, she still looked the same as before, but her counterattack was wonderful and precise. But Hu Xiaolin has already been put on the grill, and the previously prepared belly draft has to be said. After all, the educated youth have a limited amount of food every day. Just now, she ate a full meal alone and even hid a little. As a result, today's dinner will be even less than lunch. Hu Xiaolin was so worried that she followed the way she had planned before and said to Tong Siya, "It's okay. Don't blame yourself. You are a newcomer and a daughter of the factory director. It's normal that you can't cook. Everyone is a brother and sisters, and you won't be blamed." Then he added, "However, you need to be more careful about tonight's dinner. You can't let everyone starve anymore." Tong Siya chuckled inwardly. She had already predicted Hu Xiaolin's methods just now. I was really guessed right. I believe that Hu Xiaolin and Huahua have already cleaned up all day's rations today. Maybe there isn't even a single bean left for dinner. Hu Xiaolin not only wants her to carry the pot for lunch, but also wants her to carry the pot for dinner. Tong Siya was about to cry, but. Hu Xiaolin inserted her hands into her waist and her face changed. But what? Comrade Tong Siya, we are all educated youth who go to the countryside to cut in line. Put away your tears. What do you look like crying and crying? I really don't know how to cook, Tong Siya said politely. So Comrade Hu Xiaolin, thank you for being so capable and willing to teach me how to cook. Why don't I go and take out the miscellaneous beans and wild vegetables now, and you teach me how to cook? At the same time, please also ask other comrades to teach me together. Speaking, Tong Siya put down her lunchbox and walked to the kitchen at a speed that was too fast to think. She took out the cloth bag containing beans and the basket containing wild vegetables. It's like this, the whole country is not wealthy now, and the educated youth in Fangling village are no exception. Last year, the Fangling Production Brigade allocated 20 educated youth a whole year's rations, with only 100 kilograms of rice and over 500 kilograms of miscellaneous beans evenly distributed. One person only had less than 3 kilograms of rations per month. I can't eat enough at all. During the idle farming season, Jing Xiangdong had to bring the educated youth into the forest to hunt some prey, dig some wild fruits and vegetables, and so on. It is currently busy farming season, and Jing Xiangdong allocates today's rations to the educated youth responsible for cooking every morning. The remaining grains are all locked in the warehouse, and he carries the keys with him. At this moment, Tong Siya swiftly took out the small cloth bag and basket containing the day's rations with lightning speed. Hu Xiaolin was startled. She wanted to stop, but it was too late. Tong Siya held the empty cloth bag and asked in surprise, Xiaolin, where are the beans we use for cooking tonight? The eyes of the educated youth were all directed towards Hu Xiaolin. Hu Xiaolin became angry with embarrassment and said, how do I know? Tong Siya picked up the empty basket again and asked incredulously, Xiaolin, what about? The wild vegetables I picked back. Although I picked a total of 20, that's about 30 pounds of wild vegetables. Did you cook all of your meals? But it doesn't look like there were 30 or 10 pounds of wild vegetables in lunch, does it? Hu Xiaolin. The wild vegetables picked by Tong Siya are particularly beautiful, neatly stacked one by one, tied with grass ropes and planted with wild flowers. When Hu Xiaolin saw it, she mocked Tong Siya behind her back. She made some random dishes for lunch and hid all the remaining wild vegetables, intending to give them to Mrs. Wang in the village this afternoon. Mrs. Wang is responsible for the maintenance of the village oil extraction workshop, and Hu Xiaolin plans to use those wild vegetables to exchange for some oil. The next time it's her turn to cook, she will be able to enjoy the oily bean soup. At this point, everyone understands that Hu Xiaolin is responsible for making lunch today. But lunch looks like this, and the food for dinner is also gone. It's probably because Hu Xiaolin has eaten it. Jing Xiangdong finally spoke up, Hu Xiaolin, did you make lunch today? Hu Xiaolin became anxious and said, no. It's not me. It's really not me. Tong Siya suddenly said loudly, Captain Jing, I have something to report. No one knows how hard Tong Siya tried to restrain her hatred when talking to Jing Xiangdong. And Jing Xiangdong looked at the beautiful and charming Tong Siya, his gaze entwined, his lips curved with a smile, and he said in a warm voice, what do you want to say? Hu Xiaolin instinctively felt that Tong Siya was going to give her own little report, and couldn't help but be surprised and angry. She screamed and interrupted Jing Xiangdong's conversation with Tong Siya, Tong Siya. What are you talking nonsense about? You've only been here for just over a month, and are you going to destroy our collective unity and friendship? As she spoke, she looked at Tong Siya's beautiful face with jealousy and snorted softly, or do you want to seduce Captain Jing in public? As soon as these words were spoken, all the educated youth frowned and looked at Hu Xiaolin. Does she think they're blind? They were all present. When did Tong Siya seduce Jing Xiangdong? Tong Siya didn't pay any attention to Hu Xiaolin at all, but sincerely said to Jing Xiangdong, Captain Jing, it's like this. This morning, when I went up the back mountain with my village ants to dig wild vegetables, my family suddenly sent someone to report to me, asking me to find a way to get some mountain goods back. Time was too tight at the time, so I had to allocate 3 pieces of wild vegetables to go out. So I'll go pick 3 more wild vegetables later and come back to make up for it. Tong Siya said. Tong Siya didn't say a bad word about Hu Xiaolin at all, and even voluntarily admitted a harmless mistake, which unintentionally enhanced Tong Siya's ideological consciousness. More indirectly, it clarifies the division of labor between Tong Siya and Hu Xiaolin, not only clearly explaining their responsibilities, but also proving that Tong Siya's attempt to dig wild vegetables was proven by someone. In this comparison, the character of Tong and Hu is superior and inferior. The eyes of the educated youth towards Hu Xiaolin became even more contemptuous. Hu Xiaolin opened her mouth wide, blushing with embarrassment, unable to say a word for a long time. This Hu Xiaolin broke out in a cold sweat. Jing Xiangdong gave Tong Siya a deep glance and softly said, "Okay, you just need to add 3 more wild vegetables." Then he turned his head and looked at Hu Xiaoshi, his face became very serious. "Hu Xiaolin, you are also going to make tonight's dinner. However, everyone has seen the quality of the lunch, and we must make it back, otherwise we will take a note of it for you. Do you understand?" Hu Xiaolin let out a sob and turned her head to glare at Tong Siya with hatred. Tong Siya ignored her and first went back to the dormitory to get something, then left with a basket containing lunch boxes and other items. She walked quickly and did not notice the eager and enthusiastic gaze of Jing Xiangdong falling on her. Chapter 5. The Home of the Rough Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tong Siya went to find Jin Ye. Jin Ye lives alone in a dilapidated house halfway up the mountain. Strictly speaking, his residence cannot be called a house. That is a pile of ruins and broken walls. Jin Ye's home is located under a mud wall that has not yet completely collapsed, with a thatched shed built on top. A door panel in the house is like a bed after 3 days of rebirth. Tong Siya followed the ants in the village to dig wild vegetables and listened to all the gossip in the village. It is said that Jin Ye's grandfather became a wealthy tycoon in another city before the liberation. After the war broke out, he ran back to his hometown Fangling village for refuge. In the process, he took some money to make friends and build roads for the village. In the most difficult years, he once opened a Congee shop to support villagers for a period of time, and later died. When Jin Ye was 5 or 6 years old, his parents went abroad and never returned. When he was 12 or 13 years old, his grandfather passed away due to illness, leaving him alone. The feelings of the villagers towards Jin Ye are very complex. His ancestors were big capitalists, but his grandparents and his parents did not do anything wrong. He lost his close relatives and became an orphan when he was the most rebellious. Some people comforted him for the sake of several bowls of congee his grandfather had given him in those years, and some people ridiculed his parents' early death as retribution. Who let him be the son of the evil landlord, and others scolded him for wanting to eat free food. In a fit of anger, the young man refused to join the production team and threatened that he would not rely on anyone. He was self-sufficient. So he came and went alone, looking for food on his own, relying on the mountains to eat, naturally nurtured by nature. No one in the village wants to interact with him, and he is too lazy to take care of himself. The consequence is that he lives rougher and more like a wild man. After all, 10 years have passed, and his clothes were still purchased by his parents when he was a child. Now they are already in tatters and tatters. He might as well go bare for 3 seasons a year and wrap himself in a tattered cotton quilt in winter. His hair is also getting longer and longer, sometimes he cuts it randomly with a sickle himself. The men in the village are jealous of Jin Ye's strength and being a bachelor. They don't want to make friends with him because they can eat alone and have a comfortable family. the women in the village despise Jin Ye for his sloppiness and bad behavior, and are unwilling to discuss marriage with him. Jin Ye seems quite miserable. And in her past life, Tong Siya only realized after her death that Jin Ye might be the only person in the world who cared about her life and death, although she never knew this while alive. Now, just because Jin Ye is about to become Jing Xiangdong's archenemy, Tong Siya will also have a natural liking for Jin Ye. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. However, for Tong Siya, the dilemma she currently most wants to solve is to quickly fill her stomach. Jin Ye is stewing rabbit meat in his yard. 3 large stones are stacked together to make a simple stove. The firewood should have been picked up temporarily, and there is a stew pot on the stove. The bottom of the pot is blazing fire, and the pot is filled with boiling meat soup. The air is filled with a rich aroma of food. Jin Ye glanced at Tong Siya and ignored her, so he sat by the fire and bent down to grab a pair of tongs to scrape the bottom of the pot. This time, Tong Siya carefully observed Jin Ye and found that although he ignored her, his hands were clearly trembling slightly, and his ears began to turn red. Originally, Tong Siya was also a bit nervous. Seeing him so shy now, she suddenly relaxed. Tong Siya confidently placed the basket aside, took out her lunchbox, opened it, and let Jin Ye take a look. Jin Ye frowned with just one glance. Do educated youth only eat these? The bean water in this lunchbox is as clear as water. How many beans are sparse and sparse? Tong Siya asked, can I also pour these beans into the broth? Jin Ye remained silent. Mainly, I am too nervous to speak. Tong Siya smiled and asked, I have contributed these beans. Can you add an extra bowl of broth? A total of 6 bowls, okay. The sweet and soft voice of the girl made Jin Ye blush inexplicably. He rubbed and stood up, deliberately speaking maliciously, what nonsense. Let it go if you want. He hastily threw down a sentence and ran away to the side. Tong Siya smiled. She poured the bean soup into the rabbit meat pot, then took out shampoo and comb from the basket and said to Jin Ye, who was squatting on the side for something unknown, hey, Jin Ye. You go fetch water, use this to wash your hair first, and then I'll help you cut your hair. Jin Ye lowered his head and pretended to be busy, but remained silent for a long time. After a while, he quietly turned around and glanced at Tong Siya. He found that Tong Siya had gone to the side and was busy with something. Her shampoo and comb had been placed on the stone beside her. Jin Ye ran over quickly, grabbed the shampoo and comb, and then ran away, starting to ponder over her comb and shampoo. Tong Siya's comb is made of bamboo, half old, and only half of the shampoo is left. Jin Ye saw the hair comb used by girls for the first time after developing gender awareness, and felt it was extremely small, exquisite, and cute. He couldn't help but look back and forth, then I measured my shampoo again and was curious about how to use it. Tong Siya's voice suddenly sounded in his ear, Jin Ye, go and fetch water first. I'll teach you how to use it. Jin Ye's body stiffened instantly, motionless and silent. On the one hand, it was because the girl's voice was too sweet and pleasant to listen to, and on the other hand, because the girl was too close to him. He could smell the faint warm fragrance on the girl's body, and even feel the breath she brought out when speaking. All sprayed on his ear tips and neck. Tong Siya saw that he had no response and let out a puzzled with a soft and sweet nasal tone. Jin Ye's heart trembled. He is ashamed and angry to death. Because he is so poor that he has neither a bucket nor a basin. How do I fetch water? Tong Siya also quickly realized. She patiently taught him, do you always know how to wash your hair? Wet your hair with water, wet it to the roots, rub it a few times, and then squeeze some shampoo out of this shampoo bottle. That's all, Tong Siya gestured and continued, and then apply the shampoo to your palm to create bubbles, which you can use to scrub your hair. Tong Siya explained the steps of washing hair twice in detail, and then asked Jin Ye, do you understand? Jin Ye nodded with a red face and lowered his eyes, afraid to look at her. Then you go to the river to wash it quickly. After washing it, those beans should be able to stew until rotten, Tong Siya said with a smile. Jin Ye quickly ran away with her comb and shampoo. Chapter 6. Broth Soup of Rough Han. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Tong Siya started tidying up Jin Ye's yard. It can be seen that Jin Ye's original home was really big, but there wasn't a good piece of land. But the terrain is very flat, and if we tidy it up in the future, we can create a big vegetable field and garden. Also, hey, this place is too much like a garbage dump, with broken furniture all over the floor. After picking and choosing for a long time, she finally found a few suitable wooden boards and went to move a few more stones. She used the boards as a dining table and 2 benches on top of the stones. Then I went to look at the meat chunks and beans rolling happily in the pot. After a while, Jin Ye ran back in a panic. Tong Siya noticed that his hair was wet and there were also water stains on his body. The man's hair was soaked and pulled back to the back of his head, his eyes and forehead completely exposed. Tong Siya widened her eyes in surprise. Whether in his past or present life, Tong Siya has seen his appearance clearly for the first time. So Jin Ye looks so beautiful. Speaking of which, Jin Ye is a very extreme complex in appearance. His facial features are handsome, beautiful, and delicate, with a subtle feminine beauty that is indistinguishable between male and female, but his height close to 1.9 meters and extremely strong body. Tong Siya secretly compared and felt that his muscular arms might be thicker than her thighs. However, since he is so handsome, why does he always like to cover his facial features with his hair? Jin Ye panicked and reached out his hand to Tong Siya. A bamboo comb with a few broken teeth was lying quietly in the heart of his hand, which was covered in thick calluses and notches. Jin Ye said incoherently, "I." He was so anxious that he wanted to cry. He really didn't know that this thing was so casual. He just combed it a few times and surprisingly broke a few comb teeth. Tong Siya only took a glance and understood, comforting him gently, "It's okay, it can still be used." Jin Ye was stunned. The girl has a beautiful voice and a beautiful smile. For a moment, he dared not look directly at her and quickly lowered his gaze, staring awkwardly at his big feet. But then I saw her wearing shiny little leather shoes. She was wearing shoes, and her feet were smaller than his. Tong Siya reminded him, "That meat should be stewed, come over and eat it quickly. By the way, do you have salt? Can it be seasoned?" Jin Ye's attention turned to the pot of stewed meat again, and then he saw the tables and chairs set up by Tong Siya with wooden boards. His handsome face turned red and he quickly went to fetch salt to flavor the stewed meat in the pot. But, Jin Ye doesn't even have a bowl. He rarely stews soup because it's too troublesome and he has to wash the pot, so when he catches prey, he mostly eats it grilled. Today, it was Tong Siya who said she wanted to exchange meat soup with him, and it was only then that he made the soup for the first time. Unexpectedly, in front of his crush, he had no house, no tables and chairs, no bucket and basin, and even no bowl. Jin Ye felt such a strong sense of shame for the first time. Tong Siya didn't care. She had 2 lunch boxes, one for being congee and the other for cold mixed wild vegetables. At this moment, she poured out the wild vegetables containing sand and used a little bit of broth to rinse the lunch box, then began to add the broth. A lunch box with soup and meat, a lunch box with pure meat soup, but Jin Ye pushed the lunch box with meat towards Tong Siya, then took the lunchbox with pure meat soup added, lowered his head and blew, without the courage to look up at her. Tong Siya was very greedy for the meat in the lunchbox, but still said seriously, "Jin Ye, we agreed before that I would help you cut your hair and mend your clothes. You owe me 6 bowls of meat soup." Jin Ye whispered, "I broke your comb." "A comb is not valuable," Tong Siya said. "I can't afford it either," Jin Ye insisted. Tong Siya smiled and said, "Okay, then. This bowl of soup with meat should be worth my comb. This is truly an unexpected joy. But in this way, Tong Siya won't be able to bully honest people anymore. The 6 bowls of meat soup she had planned to exchange with Jin Ye wasn't just for drinking 6 bowls of soup at a time, but for rubbing against him for 6 meals, each with 1 bowl of meat soup. I didn't expect the villagers to spread Jin Ye so badly. In fact, they are very reasonable. What surprised Tong Siya even more was that Jin Ye suddenly said, I broke your comb, so this time it doesn't count. Starting from the next time, I owe you 6 meals, 1 meal a day, and I promise to make you full. Let's start from tomorrow. Do you want to have lunch or dinner with me? He had no expression on his face, as if he was completely indifferent. God knows how crazy his heart is beating at this moment. He couldn't control his heart rate and could only try to control his breathing, pretending nothing had happened. Tong Siya chuckled as she looked at Jin Ye's already red earbuds. She lowered her head and took a bite of the stewed rabbit meat, whispering, okay. The girl's voice is so beautiful, gentle and charming, like the fluff on a peach bathed in the spring breeze. It is gentle yet itchy. Jin Ye's handsome face instantly turned red. The rabbit meat is stewed very soft and rotten. I don't know if it's because Jin Ye doesn't have any ingredients or doesn't like them. The meat soup tastes a bit fishy, but it has a strong flavor. Tong Siya has not eaten any meat or fish for a long time, and she doesn't care about it. She only thinks that the meat soup has a strong aroma of beans, and the taste is very good. Tong Siya held the lunch box and slowly took a sip of the warm broth, which greatly comforted her stomach. She was in a great mood and continued, then I'll choose the evening. Jin Ye's mind had already snapped, and he looked up at Tong Siya in confusion, not knowing what she meant by night. After finishing a full lunch box of rabbit meat with soup, Tong Siya felt comfortable all over and happily packed the lunch box. She looked up at Jin Ye and found that his hair was already half dry. The young man's hair was half long, and when it was wet, he would lift it to the back of his head, revealing his slanted eyebrows and snowy eyes, but when his hair dried out, it appeared a bit fluffy, hanging down to cover his eyebrows and eyes. Although it covered his sharp gaze, his entire temperament became sinister and fierce. However, Tong Siya is not afraid of him at all. Who makes him a shy big boy? Tong Siya reached out and touched his hair. After rubbing it twice, she found that his hair was very soft and fine. She was pondering in her heart what kind of hairstyle would be suitable for him. Jin Ye was frightened by her actions and stiffened, not daring to move a single moment. Suddenly, someone shouted angrily, Tong Siya. What are you doing? Tong Siya and Jin Ye turned their heads together and saw that the person coming was Jing Xiangdong. Chapter 7. Tears of the Rough Man. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Jing Xiangdong was worried that Tong Siya might not have enough food to eat, so he secretly hid a few cookies and wanted to give them to her. Unexpectedly, he turned around and disappeared from her. He wandered around the village for a while before finally finding her here in Jin Ye. What the hell is she doing? Why is she with Jin Ye? She doesn't know who Jin Ye is. He is a landlord with poor ingredients. Why did she eat meat with Jin Ye? Don't she know that she has a short mouth and a short hand? If you eat Jin Ye's, you have to repay him. She is a powerless female educated youth, what should she take back? Can it be said that Jin Ye harbors ill intentions towards Tong Siya? He wants to use rabbit meat to seduce the simple and beautiful Tong Siya. Jing is exploding with anger towards the east. But just as he let out a roar, he saw Tong Siya reach out and touch Jin Ye's head with a smile. This scene made Jing Xiangdong's eyes crack with anger. He lost his sanity and rushed forward to grab Tong Siya's slender wrist, angrily shouting, Tong Siya, what are you doing? Tong Siya's wrist was tightly gripped by Jing Xiangdong, causing her pretty face to turn pale with pain. Jin Ye stood up and slapped Jing Xiangdong's hand off. You hurt her, didn't you see? Tong Siya stroked her wrist and hid behind Jin Ye, then lowered her head to see that her right wrist had been pinched white by Jing Xiangdong, exactly 5 finger marks. Jing Xiangdong naturally saw it and couldn't help but regret it. Siya, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, He looked at Jin Ye and couldn't help but freeze. The rough man in front of him is tall and has long legs. He has 2 sturdy and huge pectoralis major muscles on his bare wheat-colored chest, as well as a strong brachiocephalus muscle on his thick arms. He simply and roughly displays his master's sense of power. Although he has long hair covering his eyes and stands lazily, there is a fierce light between his faintly visible eyebrows. Jing Xiangdong involuntarily took a few steps back. At this moment, Tong Siya leaned out half of her face from behind Jin Ye, frowning and looking at him alertly. The girl has a petite and delicate figure, beautiful and snowy skin. Standing with a tall and strong rough man, she has an indescribable coordination and compatibility. Jing was stunned to the east, feeling a wave of jealousy in his heart. Tong Siya, what are you doing here alone? He asked in a deep voice. Tong Siya said in a low voice, can you manage it? Jing Xiangdong, you. Tong Siya ignored him and grabbed Jin Ye's sturdy arm. Come over here, I'll help you cut your hair. Jin Ye just stared coldly at Jing Xiangdong with cannibalistic eyes, clenching his fists and stiffening his whole body. At this moment, she held on to her warm and tender little hand, and her whole body suddenly became confused. With such a big figure, she let her sit aside in a daze. So obedient that she dared not resist at all. Tong Siya rummaged through her basket to find scissors, polished the blade with a stone, and then took the broken comb to comb Jin Ye's long hair. His hair is soft and fluffy, and because it is long, it is easy to knot. Tong Siya carefully combed everything for him and asked, you don't have any requirements for hairstyles? Do you? Jin Ye sat in a daze, his heart surging and his eyes turning red. Tong Siya's infinite approach made Jin Ye's heart beat like a war drum. And she treated his hair so gently, every time she combed it to the knot, she would stop and cover it with her hand, slowly and carefully combing it, afraid of hurting him or letting go of any knot, until all his hair was combed smoothly. Since he became sensible, the villagers have looked at him with disdain, pity, hatred, jealousy. No one has ever been so kind to him before. Tong Siya didn't wait for Jin Ye's answer, but she didn't mind either. But you don't have to choose anymore. I didn't know how to cut a man's hairstyle, would you just cut it short? Jin Ye dare not speak. Mainly, her movements were too gentle, as if he were a fragile treasure. His tears were already swirling back and forth in his eyes. What should I do if I'm afraid of crying when I speak up? Fortunately, she couldn't see. Jin Ye desperately suppressed the frenzy that surged in his heart and gasped for breath before answering, cut it. Cut it short. Tong Siya started working with a comb and scissors. In her past life, in order to save money, she personally took care of the hair of the 2 elderly people and 8 children at home. I can't say how good her craftsmanship is, but it's not difficult to cut a man's hair into small pieces. After Tong Siya finished cutting Jin Ye's hair, Jing Xiangdong had already left. Tong Siya picked up the broken hair that had fallen on Jin Ye's body and explained to him, don't you have any other clothes? Even if you're old or torn, it's okay. If you're short or small, it doesn't matter. You can find me to help you change it, and I can always piece it together into a piece of clothing. You can't do this all day long. Can't you? Jin Ye's face turned red again. Tong Siya looked at Jin Ye covered in broken hair and said, you can go wash your hair later. Then she started packing up her things. Pack your things and prepare to leave. Jin Ye suddenly stood up and grabbed her arm. He looked at her visibly swollen wrist with a surprised expression on his face. Why is your hand swollen like this? Tong Siya looked at Jin Ye's face in shock. Oh my God, Jin Ye, who has shaved his inch board, is so handsome. Such a handsome face, coupled with a beast-like physique, gives a huge visual impact. However, Tong Siya quickly looked at her hand. Her arms were still slender and snow-white, but when she reached her wrist, it was like wearing a sports wristband, suddenly swollen, red, and even revealing her 5 fingerprints clearly. Damn Jing Xiangdong, he still hits so hard. Tong Siya has been working just now and hasn't felt anything yet. Now that she sees it, she suddenly feels that her right hand is weak and sore. Rotate your wrist again, and you'll feel like it's a muscle pain or a bone pain, but it won't work. She frowned. Jin Ye mistakenly thought that he was hurting her, so he quickly let go and said, "You need to deal with it quickly, otherwise you won't be able to do any work." "Got it." Tong Siya responded and gently stroked her wrist. She walked to the side and placed the basket on the elbow of her other hand, then turned around and walked away. Jin Ye stared at her back for a while, then turned around and walked quickly up the mountain. Tong Siya returned to the educated youth station, and just as she put down her basket, Hu Xiaolin rushed over and said, "Tong Siya, where did you go just now?" Tong Siya ignored her and entered the dormitory to search for boxes and cages, wanting to take out safflower oil to rub her swollen wrist. Hu Xiaolin followed her relentlessly. "Tong Siya, where the hell have you been? Xiang Dong went to find you. I was so angry when I came back that he scolded me. Why are you doing this? You did something wrong and made Xiang Dong angry, which affected me. Do you know that?" Tong Siya chuckled inwardly, thinking she deserved it. "Hey, where's her safflower oil?" A few days ago, when she just came back from her rebirth, she counted everything and confirmed that there was safflower oil. Why is it missing now? The clothes in the cage don't seem to be arranged in the right order either. Tong Siya slammed the lid of the box and stared at Hu Xiaolin, asking, "Did you flip through my box?" Hu Xiaolin was startled and her eyes flickered. She looked around and said, that. Hey, I have something else to do. I'm going to work." After saying that, she ran away. Tong Siya's face darkened. She reopened the cage and carefully counted her luggage, only to find that half a bottle of safflower oil, a box of cooling oil, and a bottle of cold medicine were missing. It seemed that a few bills were missing from the bundle of money. Tong Siya narrowed her eyes. Chapter 8. Taking someone else's gun and poking someone else's horse. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Perhaps it was because she had suffered enough losses in her previous life, but now Tong Siya doesn't want to bear it at all. She casually closed the lid of the cage and ran out after Hu Xiaolin. However, Hu Xiaolin felt guilty and ran very fast. When Tong Siya chased after her, she only saw a shadow flickering past halfway up the mountain slope. "Siya." Someone shouted anxiously from the other end of the mountain slope. Tong Siya turned her head and saw that the person coming was Tian Xiuying. Tian Xiuying is Tong Siya's biological mother. And Tian Xiuying was followed by Tong Hun and Tong Sanchun sisters. The mother and daughter rushed towards Tong Siya with great momentum in a short while. "Comrade, do you have something to do with me?" Tong Siya asked with a smile. Tian Xiuying. She frowned and looked at Tong Siya. "Do you call me comrade?" Tong Siya changed her voice and said, "My fellow villager, do you have anything to do with me?" Tian Xiuying's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. "Are you calling me a fellow villager?" Tong Siya thought to herself, "Auntie, do you have something to do with me?" Tian Xiuying looked incredulous and said, "You call me auntie?" Tong Siya also frowned and said, "So what do you want me to call you?" "I'm your mother." Tian Xiuying roared angrily. Tong Siya called out, "Mom," like a flow of kindness, and said tactfully, "Mom, I'm hungry. I'm too hungry to be strong. I must eat braised pork belly, or I may starve to death." "Mom, am I your own daughter? You won't die, will you?" Tian Xiuying. Tong Siya, "Oh, Mom, I like braised pork belly that is thinner, but I don't like it because it is too fat. By the way, when will you make braised pork belly for me?" Tong Ek-hun and Tong Sanchun also widened their eyes in shock. The mother and daughter stared at Tong Siya in confusion, wondering why Tong Siya, who used to be so easy to bully, suddenly seemed to have changed her personality. Tong Siya continued, "Mom, I know you feel sorry for me. After all, there are only a few siblings at home, and everyone has been by your side. With your care, they are not at a disadvantage. Only me. Since I was a child, I have not been by your side. A child with a mother is like a treasure, and a child without a mother is like a blade of grass." Tian Xiuying clenched her fist tightly and rolled her eyes in anger. This dead child. She came today to question Tong Siya why she didn't value Director Tong's orders. How Tong Siya wanted to smile as she looked at Tian Xiuying's expression. But she put on a sad expression. "Mom, I have lived in the educated youth station for more than a month. When will you take me home for braised pork belly?" "Mom, you don't know. They're all laughing at me, saying I have a mother and no mother. They're also saying that if you don't pick me up, I'm afraid I'll waste my family's food. But Mom, isn't I your daughter? How could you possibly not want me, right? Mom, they said you dislike me for not being able to work and are afraid that I will drag you down, so you won't let me go home. They also said that you are planning to marry me off to collect a rich dowry." Tian Xiuying opened her mouth wide and couldn't say a word for a long time. Who made Tong Siya guess all the thoughts in her heart by saying, "they say"? Tian Xiuying became angry with embarrassment. She thrust her hands into her waist and shouted angrily, "Who said that? Don't listen to others' nonsense and sow discord." At this moment, Tong Siya suddenly saw Hu Xiaolin, who had already run away, running back. Hu Xiaolin looked at Tong Siya with a look of schadenfreude on her face. She even found a tree trunk nearby and leaned leisurely, taking out a handful of melon seeds from her pocket to nibble on them, looking as if she was waiting for a good show. Tong Siya thought for a moment, what would she do if she had encountered such a situation in her past life? Well, in her past life, she may not pursue Hu Xiaolin's theft behavior due to her eagerness to integrate into the collective of educated youth, as there is no evidence or physical evidence. In her past life, she was also determined to please Tian Xiuying and gain her recognition, so she allowed her to plead with her. Now, she has already been reborn, who cares about these empty-headed and brainless things? So Tong Siya pointed to Hu Xiaolin not far away and said, "It's her." What Hu Xiaolin said. Tian Xiuying froze again and turned her head to look at Hu Xiaolin in confusion. Tong Siya said quickly, "Mom, let me tell you, next month for my dad's birthday, I have already planned to come out with 50 yuan to arrange a birthday banquet for him. But just now I found out that my money is missing." Tian Xiuying's eyebrows twitched fiercely. "What? 50 yuan? Tong Siya doesn't have 50 yuan at all. When she went to the countryside, the Tong family didn't give her a penny, just asked her to take her clothes, comb, soap, and other things with her. She saved all her own money, totaling around 267 yuan. Hu Xiaolin did indeed steal some of the money, and Tong Siya estimated it to be around 3 yuan. The reason why she didn't take everything away should be that Hu Xiaolin didn't want to catch Tong Siya's attention, but all that money was saved by Tong Siya through her hard work, little by little. How could she not know if she lost the money? Tong Siya had no intention of letting Hu Xiaolin go, but Tian Xiuying was also bothering her at this critical moment. She doesn't mind taking someone else's gun or poking someone else's horse at all. "Mom, besides losing money, all my snow cream, soap, safflower oil, cold medicine, and cooling oil are gone." Tong Siya said sorrowfully, "Mom, I have nothing left now. Mom, give me 50 yuan. I really don't have money to hold my dad's birthday party, nor do I have money to buy gifts for my sisters and younger brother. I also need to buy those medicine oils and cold medicine again as a backup." Tian Xiuying is in a hurry. 50 yuan. That's 50 yuan. Although it's not her money, Tong Siya's money is about equal to her money. She had never seen the 5 great unity cards together look like in her lifetime, and someone stole them. That's the closest 50 yuan to her. And the things that Tong Siya lost. It hurts so much to listen to. Tian Xiuying anxiously asked, "What's going on? Who is so despondent as to dare to steal your money and things?" Tong Siya shook her head and said, "I don't know. But I saw it before I left at noon. When I came back to look for it just now, it disappeared. It was only me and Hu Xiaolin at that time." Tian Xiuying understood. So it was Hu Xiaolin who stole it, right? Not far away, Hu Xiaolin could only see the Tong family whispering together, but because it was a bit far apart, she couldn't hear clearly. But Hu Xiaolin has always known the temperament of the Tong family, and also knows that Tong Siya is a fat and beautiful piece of meat in the eyes of the Tong family, which can bring them huge benefits. Hu Xiaolin just wants to stay here and eat firsthand, and then see with her own eyes how Tong Siya was punished by Tian Xiuying. She will also have a lot of conversation and humor in the future, won't she? But why did Tian Xiuying suddenly charge towards her with anger and momentum? Hu Xiaolin subconsciously felt that something was wrong. She wants to run. "You're the thief who stole my daughter's money, right?" said Hideyoshi Koda, leading her 2 daughters and rushing towards her at an incredible speed. Hu Xiaolin's heart tightened. Chapter 9. Low-level false accusations. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Now, it's time for Tong Siya to watch the play. Unfortunately, she didn't have any melon seeds to eat, so she had to sit on the side with her chin propped up and watched with relish as Tian Xiuying, along with her 2 daughters, and Hu Xiaolin had a head-to-head relationship. After all, Hu Xiaolin is an educated youth from the city, and her physical strength is not as good as the Tong family's mother and daughter. Moreover, she is still in a 1.1 battle and is simply being beaten unilaterally. Faced with the iron fists of the Tong family's mother and daughter, Hu Xiaolin, whose face had been scratched, dared not struggle at all. Her face was covered in runny nose and tears, and she explained in detail how she usually bullied Tong Siya. For example, how does she usually say outside that Tong Siya is a fox spirit? For example, what bad things did she do? And then framed Tong Siya. For example, she admitted to stealing things from Tong Siya. But she cried and shouted, saying that Tian Xiuying had wronged her. She definitely didn't take as much as 50 yuan. Tong Siya sneered. She is the party involved. How could she not know that although Hu Xiaolin was honest, she still spoke with caution? Since that's the case, then 50 yuan will have to be bitten tightly. There's really no 50 yuan. There's no 50 yuan. Hu Xiaolin wailed loudly. I swear I didn't take Tong Siya's money. No, I did, but I only took a little bit. There's no way we can do it. Our educated youth team has no food left. Captain Jing asked me to find a way to solve everyone's food problem. I'm also forced to go to Liangshan now, isn't it? Hu Xiaolin vividly portrayed the spring and autumn style of writing, completely ignoring Jing Xiangdong's actions. It was because all the rations of the educated youth were eaten by her alone, and she only pushed her motivation to steal money onto Jing Xiangdong. Hu Xiaolin continued to cry and shout, and Tong Siya doesn't have that much money at all. It's really not there. I just saw a roll of money tied up in rubber bands, not a single big unity ticket, all small change tickets. At this moment, women from the village had already heard the commotion and ran over to watch the excitement. Everyone gathered together to point. Tong Siya is the daughter of the factory director, and she has 50 yuan in her hand. Isn't that quite normal? That's right. Tong Siya's clothes are all really cold, even going up the mountain to dig wild vegetables requires wearing leather shoes. She has 50 yuan. Is this considered a strange thing? Humph, Tong Siya is just a fox spirit. Is she a fox spirit? Does she have 50 yuan in her hand? Doesn't that conflict? She looks so beautiful and still has money, thanks to her biological parents being here. Otherwise, she would have been eaten so early that she didn't even have any bones left. Actually, if I had known in advance that Tong Siya had 50 yuan in her hand, I don't think it would be a bad idea for her to be my daughter. Law. My younger brother seems to like her too. Think about it beautifully, you guys. They are educated youth. Can you look up to those crooked melons and cracked dates in our village? So who does she like? Do you really think she's the daughter of the factory director? Actually, Tong Siya has very good conditions. She is beautiful and hardworking. Where can I find such a good girl? To be honest, I wanted to introduce her to someone a long time ago. Okay, the topic has shifted from, did Hu Xiaolin steal Tong Siya's 50 yuan, to, does Tong Siya have 50 yuan, and then to, who will Tong Siya marry in the village? No one cares about Hu Xiaolin, who was beaten up like a pig's head. Tong Siya was speechless. Isn't it Hu Xiaolin's home court now? Why did the crooked building come to her again? In order to make Hu Xiaolin a good female lead, Tong Siya deliberately said in a moderate voice, we still need to reason. We can't falsely accuse people without evidence. They are all comrades of the proletariat. Hu Xiaolin, with her hair disheveled, was stunned and didn't know why Tong Siya suddenly spoke for her. Can we say that Tong Siya has already become so foolish and sweet? Tian Xiuying and her daughter were also stunned, looking at Tong Siya in confusion. They didn't understand why she said that. They were standing up for her, weren't they? The villagers who were watching began to discuss one after another. Yes, catching thieves and taking stolen goods. The Tong family said someone stole something. Where is the stolen goods? We can't just slander people, can we? Right. We need to talk about evidence. That's right, if someone stole something, where is the stolen property? Tong's family is not a good thing either. We can't just listen and believe in them. Tian Xiuying understood and immediately grabbed Hu Xiaolin's hair. Let's go. Take us to find the stolen goods. Hu Xiaolin also instantly understood and screamed, no. You know, she not only stole things from Tong Siya, in fact, everything lost in the educated youth team is with her. Even the things lost in some villagers' homes are her masterpieces. How could Tian Xiuying take someone to copy her things? No way. Hu Xiaolin yelled in panic, you guys. It's illegal for you to do this. Tian Xiuying knew there was a ghost when she saw Hu Xiaolin like this. She sneered and walked towards the educated youth dormitory. Tong Siya whispered, the innermost room in the corridor is the female educated youth dormitory, and Xiaolin's bed is on the right side under the window. Tian Xiuying responded with a nod and swaggered into the educated youth dormitory with her hands behind her back. Hu Xiaolin screamed again and frantically rushed towards Tian Xiuying, screaming, you can't flip through my things. Tong Ekun and Tong Sanchun rushed over and stopped Hu Xiaolin from following. Tong Siya said again, everyone should follow and take a look, so that no one can accuse her of being framed in the future. Tong Ekun and Tong Sanchun exchanged a glance and thought to themselves, that's how it should be. So the two of them shouted, Aunt Chi, why don't you follow my mother in and take a look too, and, why don't we all go in and take a look together? We'll see if we've wronged her. It's already this point, almost all the men in the village have gone to work, and the onlookers are mostly women, so there is no problem of avoiding suspicion. So, women who were afraid that the world would not be chaotic all crowded into the educated youth dormitory. Tong Siya sat steadily on the low stool at the entrance of the dormitory, not joining in the fun. Tong Ekun and Tong Sanchun escorted Hu Xiaolin but did not enter. Hu Xiaolin knew she was done for. She looked at Tong Siya with a look of sadness and indignation on her face. Tong Siya, what are you so worried about? When you weren't here before, our Fangling village was always fine. When you came, you insisted on making a fuss, and you wanted to kill me. Tong Siya chuckled lightly and said, you should say that, haven't you already stolen everything from others? There's really nothing to steal, that's why you caught this new sheep of mine and pulled wool from the dead. You're talking nonsense. Woo-woo, I didn't steal anything, you falsely accused me. Hu Xiaolin cried tearfully. After thinking for a moment, she felt that as soon as Tian Shuiying took out her box and opened it in front of everyone, it would be a mountain of hard evidence. So Hu Xiaolin changed her voice and said, Woo-woo, those things are all yours. You framed me and put them in my box. Tong Hun, Tong Sanchun, and several other villagers who had not entered the dormitory couldn't help but laugh at these words. Chapter 10. Laughing and watching others fly and jump. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Quickly, Tian Shuiying and the other women took out 2 boxes and cages from under Hu Xiaolin's bed and carried them out together. Hu Xiaolin was panicked and wanted to run over to stop, but was firmly grabbed by Tong Hun and Tong Sanchun. She was so anxious that she sobbed and said, How could you be like this? How could you be like this? Tian Shuiying has already forcefully opened 2 boxes and cages. The first box was filled with clothes in a mess, as if they had not been packed at all. Tian Shuiying's goal is the 50 yuan hidden by Hu Xiaolin, as well as things like safflower oil and soap. After flipping through it casually and confirming that there was no money or safflower oil, I was ready to close the lid. Aunt Wang suddenly stopped and said, Wait. Wait, how did I see my family's spring flower handkerchief? Aunt Wang Qi walked forward and searched for it. Sure enough, she found a 90% new handkerchief with a light yellow-pink begonia flower print, and held it in her hand, waving it. That handkerchief is indeed very beautiful and unique. Hu Xiaolin exclaimed urgently, That's my handkerchief. Aunt Wang Qi sneered, Is that so? Then, holding the handkerchief and looking at it, he said, This handkerchief was given by my spring flower cousin. Her cousin is from the city and got a few good handkerchiefs. It happened that they were having a wedding event at home. I took my spring flower to her cousin's house to have a wedding banquet, and they gave her this handkerchief. Hu Xiaolin was so anxious that she cried, That's my handkerchief, it's really my handkerchief. Aunt Wang walked up to Hu Xiaolin with a handkerchief and pointed to the 3 words, Wang Chunhua, embroidered on the handkerchief. She showed Hu Xiaolin, You said this handkerchief belongs to you. Why did you embroider the name of my family's spring flower on the handkerchief? Hu Xiaolin's words are stuck. Aunt Wang gave Hu Xiaolin a fierce glare and said, Actually, when Chunhua first threw away her handkerchief, she already had some doubts about you. But I thought you were an educated youth from the city, and you had never seen anything good before. How could you look up to our rural people's things? Unexpectedly, you really took them. Who? You're so shameless. Aunt Wang spat at Hu Xiaolin and cursed, You even stole children's things. It made my spring flower cry for several days after losing her handkerchief. Everyone's gaze towards Hu Xiaolin was not quite right. Tian Shuiying opened another box of Hu Xiaolin's again. This box cage contains bits and pieces of things, including dim sum, white granulated sugar, various snacks, soap, toothpaste, matchboxes, flashlights, etc. General Manager Lin Lin has always filled the box. Tong Siya saw at a glance the half bottle of safflower oil she had left behind. Take a closer look, her cooling oil, including the bottle of cold medicine, is also impressive. But what are the most prominent wild vegetables in the cage? Each wild vegetable is tied with fine grass ropes, and purple, yellow, and pink wildflowers are tied to the knots. Isn't this the wild vegetable picked by Tong Siya this morning? How could Hu Xiaolin even steal this? Tong Siya brought back what belonged to her. The other onlookers also saw to some extent what should have belonged to their own family and started shouting. Hu Xiaolin sat down on the ground, shocked, angry, ashamed, and embarrassed. She covered her face and cried loudly, You bully people. You bully me, a stranger. The onlookers were all angry and pointed at her, cursing loudly. You still have the face to say it. Our village used to have a good atmosphere, but we've been losing things since last year. It turns out it's because you came to our village. That's right, we never lost anything in our village before. I don't know how much we've lost in the past year. It's just because of you. Hu Xiaolin, why are you so shameless and disrespectful? Are you so disrespectful of your reputation? We can't let her go, otherwise she will steal even more in the future. Let's find the captain. Someone reported a message to the leader of the production team. The captain rushed back with Jing Xiangdong and others, and indeed saw that the educated youth station was in chaos. He quickly asked what was going on. Hu Xiaolin rushed over and hugged the captain's leg, crying uncontrollably. Uncle Tan. Uncle Tan, they bullied me, sobbing. Look, they flipped through my things and beat me up like this. You have to make up your own mind for me, she said. Uncle Tan, who was about 40 years old, was frightened by Hu Xiaolin's actions and didn't dare to move. He frowned and said, You. Hu Xiaolin, you have something to say. You, what do you look like now? As he spoke, Uncle Tan looked at his wife's face and quickly said to Jing Xiangdong, Xiangdong, Hu Xiaolin is from your educated youth team. Why don't you hurry up and take care of her? Jing Xiangdong hasn't spoken yet. Aunt Tan couldn't bear to watch anymore and commanded the women's army to tear Hu Xiaolin off Uncle Tan's leg and throw her aside. Uncle Tan was also very angry and gave Jing Xiangdong a glare. Xiangdong, what's going on? Tian Xiuying came over and eloquently recounted the process. Hu Xiaolin often wants to refute, but no matter how much she cries, there is no way to stop her. After Tian Xiuying finished speaking, the villagers who were watching also took the long-lost items found from Hu Xiaolin's house and testified one after another. Uncle Tan turned black and asked Jing Xiangdong, Xiangdong, how can you solve this matter? In this era, villages are far away from towns, and coupled with complex relationships between neighbors and relatives, most people would not choose to report unless a malicious case occurs. Most disputes between villagers are mediated by brigade cadres. Uncle Tan's question is actually due to the fact that Hu Xiaolin is still young. He even thought that if Hu Xiaolin admitted her mistake and had a good attitude, it wouldn't be impossible to give her another chance. Unexpectedly, Hu Xiaolin felt that Jing Xiangdong was biased towards Tong Siya. She had even scolded her before, but now that Uncle Tan asked Jing Xiangdong to handle her affairs, Jing Xiangdong still had to seek personal revenge. Hu Xiaolin shook her head desperately and said, No. Uncle Tan, it was originally Tong Siya who wanted to mess with me, so her mother helped her. Jing Xiangdong and she are also in the same group. Can you help me, please? Tong Siya didn't want to pay attention to Jing Xiangdong, but she would never suffer this immediate loss. So Tong Siya said to Jing Xiangdong, Captain Jing, it's like this. You asked Hu Xiaolin to find a way to solve our educated youth's food problem, but Hu Xiaolin was forced to steal. Upon hearing this, Jing's eyes were about to fall out. He never expected that Hu Xiaolin would dare to slap a bucket of feces on his head when she stole and was caught stealing. He glared angrily at Hu Xiaolin and said, Hu Xiaolin, is that what you said? Hu Xiaolin fell to the ground and burst into tears. No. I didn't, I'm not guilty. The villagers who were watching suddenly became unhappy and told Jing Xiangdong one after another. Xiangdong, Hu Xiaolin lied to you. That's what she just said, what Tong Siya said is true. Yes. We all heard it just now. Hu Xiaolin said, it was you who forced her to find a way to solve the problem of educated youth eating. She went to steal money. Jing Xiangdong, is what Hu Xiaolin said true? You are the captain of the educated youth team. How could you have the face to push such a big matter onto a weak woman like Hu Xiaolin? Is it like you being an official? I used to think that Jing Xiangdong was okay, but if what Hu Xiaolin said is true, then I'm really blind and wrong about him. Jing Xiangdong's face turned blue with anger.